Double nope? She stood and looked down at him for a long moment. Then she reached down and, without effort, hoisted him up by the front of his armor like he weighed less than a backpack. His feet dangled for a second before she gently set him down on one semi-stable foot. Then we move, she said. Theo blinked. Wait, so we're, like, a team now? The scary vampire elf lady and the idiot soldier? She said nothing, just walked away, expecting him to follow. Theo limped after her, still trying to process the fact that she hadn't eaten his face. He muttered under his breath, "If this ends with me becoming Space Dracula, I'm suing someone." They moved through the station like rats through a rusted maze, except one of the rats had superhuman reflexes, and the other limped like his kneecap owed him money. Theo tried to keep up, really, but the pain in his leg was now only marginally less annoying than his growing need to pee. He grunted as he hopped over what used to be a ceiling panel and probably still smelled like one. "So," he puffed, leaning against a wall that sighed in protest, "any chance you have a name that isn't terrifying?" She didn't stop walking. "Names are not used." "Cool, so I'll just keep calling you Tall, Dark, and Fangs. Has a ring to it." "No," she said flatly. "Okay, now we're negotiating." She paused then, turned slowly. Her gaze pinned him the way military instructors pin you with silence before demanding you drop and give them 50. "Nisa," he blinked. "That's actually kind of pretty." "What's it mean?" "In my language, it means the sound of blood dripping into water under twin moons." Theo blinked again. "Oh yeah, super romantic." She turned and resumed walking. They reached what looked like an old maintenance sector, where the walls sweated condensation and every console either flickered with old warnings or sparked occasionally, like they were hoping for an excuse to explode. Nisa pried open a sealed hatch with her bare hands, which Theo thought was both impressive and vaguely insulting. Inside was a small chamber filled with what must have once been medical equipment, now mostly rust and regret. Nisa gestured to a padded slab that had the least amount of mysterious goo on it. "Sit," she ordered. "I like a woman who doesn't waste time with foreplay." She turned to him with a stare so cold it could have iced over a sun. He raised his hands. "Sitting. Happily. Zero foreplay. Got it." Nisa moved with brisk, precise motion, pulling a kit from a wall panel and examining the contents like she'd done it 1,000 times. She cleaned his wound, set the brake, and applied a strange, gelatinous foam that hissed as it worked. Theo groaned in pain. "This stuff better not give me tentacles." "You would not survive tentacles," she replied, pressing a thin strip of bioweave to his thigh. He tilted his head. "Was that a joke?" Her ears twitched slightly. "No. It was definitely a joke. I'm rubbing off on you. First it's sarcasm, then it's movies. Then next thing you know, we're watching trashy rom-coms and debating space politics." "I do not watch things." "Oh, that's gonna change." She moved away and began tapping on an old data panel, fingers dancing across the dusty screen. Theo leaned back, watching her. She was so controlled, every motion calculated, but something in her shoulders gave her away. She wasn't just focused. She was alert, listening, waiting. "So," he said softly, "how long have you been stuck here?" Nissa didn't answer immediately. Then, 317 rotations of the nearest sun. Theo squinted. "Is that, like, years?" "Yes." "Holy, are you ancient?" "I was young when I arrived. Now I am not." He whistled. "Well, you wear 3 centuries well. I look like this after 30 years and 3 cafeteria burritos." She tilted her head slightly. "You still bleed easily." "Thanks, that really boosts my confidence." Nisa turned from the panel and sat across from him, legs folded like a statue. "Your people fear my kind." Theo shrugged. "We fear a lot of things. Bureaucracy, bad oxygen filters, sentient furniture, and yeah, fanged strangers with glowing eyes. We do not kill without cause. You have fangs. That's like the opposite of what someone without cause has." She studied him. "We were not always predators." The emergency lights blinked on and off like a dying club on a backwater moon, casting bloody streaks across rusted walls. Somewhere in the guts of the derelict station, something metallic screamed, and something else, probably alive, answered back. It was the kind of place most sane people avoided, which meant Theo Ward, bleeding from a very sarcastic gash on his forehead, was absolutely there. He limped forward, cradling the side of his torso like it was his favorite stuffed animal from childhood and not just a few cracked ribs. "Okay," he muttered, stepping over a collapsed support beam that looked suspiciously like it had been chewed on. "1, this is not how I wanted to spend my Thursday. 2, next time HQ says, 'Simple recon mission,' I punch HQ in the throat." His flashlight flickered in protest. He thumped it with the side of his hand. "Don't start. We're both having a bad day." The station, once a commerce hub before the corporate wars turned it into a floating coffin, was now occupied by mold, rogue auto systems, and the lingering ghost of whatever dark idea had built it. He wasn't here by choice. His shuttle had caught a viral override, a digital parasite with a sense of humor and absolutely no regard for flight safety. 1 second he was orbiting, the next he was crash landing through a vent hatch with all the grace of a drunk rhino. His comm was fried. His rations had exploded in the crash, leaving him with half a protein bar and a bottle of something that used to be water, but now bubbled like it had a personality. The only good news was that he hadn't been shot yet. The bad news, someone or something was definitely tracking him. Clank, scrape, whisper. Theo froze, pivoted, raised his sidearm. Nothing. Just the sound of a half-mad oxygen recycler wheezing through another simulated breath. And maybe, was that humming? He took a step forward. The floor groaned beneath him like it had secrets. Then another step. Then, she was there. No noise, no warning. Just there. Standing 5 meters away, in the middle of a long-abandoned command deck, lit only by the sickly glow of flickering monitors. She looked human at first glance. Tall, poised, wrapped in something that shimmered between fabric and armor. Her skin was a pale violet gray, her long ears twitching with the faintest movement. Her eyes caught the light like twin shards of Nova glass. Bright, cold, unblinking. Theo lowered his weapon slowly. "Well," he said, "either I'm concussed, hallucinating, or I've just met the most intimidating cosplayer in the galaxy." She didn't respond. "You gonna kill me now or after the dramatic pause?" he added, glancing to the side. "Because if it's after, I should probably sit. My leg's doing this crunchy thing I don't love." Still nothing. She just studied him, the way predators do, right before deciding if the meal is worth the effort. He sighed and sat against the wall, wincing as his side lit up like a star flare. "Name's Theo. Sergeant. Terran Expeditionary Force. Card-carrying idiot, evidently. You got a name, or do I just call you tall, dark, and pointy-eared?" She stepped forward. He flinched, but only a little. She moved like a shadow, her boots barely making a sound. She crouched beside him, close enough that he could see the faint lines on her cheeks. Veins? Tattoos? He couldn't tell. Her voice was low, layered with something strange. Not synthetic, not quite natural either, like she spoke with more than one mouth. "You bleed," she said. "Yeah," he muttered. "Usually how it goes when you fall 50 meters and kiss a wall on the way down." She tilted her head. "You are not afraid." "Oh, I am. But I've also lost enough blood that I'm currently negotiating with a hallucinated sandwich about my dignity. So, mixed emotions." That earned something. Not a laugh, but a twitch in the corner of her lip. Almost a smile. Almost. He fished into his pocket with shaking fingers and held out the last chunk of his protein bar. "Look, I don't know what you are, but I get the vibe you're hungry. And unless you want to eat me, in which case, rude, I suggest we split this and maybe not murder each other. Deal?" She stared at it like he'd offered her a relic of divine power. Slowly, she reached out and took it. Her fingers brushed his. Cold, steady, but no claws. That was something. She bit off a piece and chewed in silence, then blinked. "This, is unpleasant." Theo grinned. "Yeah, we call it nutrition, the real horror of humanity." She glanced at the monitors, then at the door. "Others will come. He nodded. Yeah, hunters, probably angry ones, with big guns and tiny brains. She turned back to him. You cannot run. Nope. And you cannot fight. He leaned forward. Okay, I'll bite. Poor choice of words. What changed? Nisa looked at the far wall, as if memory had etched itself into the metal. A virus manufactured, designed to alter bioempathy, weaponized hunger. My people were healers once. It rewrote us. Let me guess, your neighbors weren't thrilled. They hunted us, labeled us abominations. We ran, scattered, hid in the dark places between stars. I am the last. Theo scratched his chin. You ever think of, I don't know, sending out a PR team? Hi, we're not evil. We just got genetically wrecked by interstellar capitalism. Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but not a smile. He grinned. See? You're warming up to me. Your optimism is exhausting. You should see my dancing. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of dead systems filling the air. Then Nisa's head jerked slightly. Her ears twitched. What is it? Theo asked. She stood. Movement. 2 levels below. Friendly movement? She looked down at him. None of this galaxy is friendly. He groaned. Can I at least limp threateningly behind you while you look cool and save us? You can try. She pulled a sleek blade from her side and handed him a wrench. He looked at it. This is not a weapon. It is for someone who improvises poorly. He raised it like a sword. I dubbed thee Wrench-a-Lot. She ignored him and opened the hatch again. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, metal on metal getting closer. Nissa slipped into the shadows like smoke. Theo followed slower, muttering, Next time I crash land, I'm aiming for a spa station. As they disappeared down a dark corridor, the station behind them lit up. Just for a moment, a single camera, long thought dead, came to life. It tracked their movement, then blinked red. Someone was watching, and they weren't amused. The blast doors to the lower sector exploded inward like a toddler having a tantrum with a battering ram. Theo ducked instinctively, covering his head with both arms and muttering something involving socks, fire, and his will to live. Chunks of plating slammed into the walls around them, and Nessa didn't even flinch. He peered up from behind a flipped console. Okay, that was either a welcome party or someone just hit the dramatic entrance button way too hard. Nisa was already crouched, eyes locked on the advancing figures in sleek, matte black armor. No insignia, no lights, just smooth, insect-like helmets and weapons that hummed with the kind of menace only high-grade corporate tech could afford. Let me guess, Theo whispered. Not your friends. They are extraction agents, private sector, paid to erase. Erase what? She didn't answer, just looked at him like the answer was painfully obvious. He groaned. Oh, right. Me. United States. The mysterious, ancient, genetically cursed vampire lady and her sarcastic meatbag sidekick. We're the hazard. The first agent stepped through the smoke, lifted his weapon, and fired. Nisa moved. Not like a human. Not even like something playing by the rules of physics. One moment she was beside Theo, the next she was above the agent, twisting midair, blades singing as they cut through polymer armor like wet paper. He crumpled silently. The others reacted instantly, opening fire with synchronized precision. Theo did what any brave soldier would do. He ran behind the nearest hunk of wall and tried very hard not to wet himself. Nisa danced through the chaos, her blades flashing, her body slipping between bursts of energy fire. She was silent, efficient, deadly, like a horror story told in reverse. Instead of being about her, she was the punchline that ended the story. Theo peeked around the corner, wrench in hand. Okay, I'll just wait here. Let you do your vampire ninja thing. Totally fine. Yep, completely fine. A grenade landed near him. Less fine. He grabbed the metal sphere and, without thinking, hurled it back with all the energy his injured leg could muster. It bounced once, twice, then stuck to the side of one agent's helmet. There was a pause, a long, drawn-out moment where the universe seemed to blink. Oops, Theo muttered. The explosion rocked the corridor. When the smoke cleared, there were only 3 agents left, and one very impressed alien vampire woman, looking at him with a new sort of squint. He shrugged. What? Lucky throw. You are chaos wrapped in meat. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. More fire. More movement. The remaining agents retreated, using smoke and drones to cover their exit. Theo hobbled over to Nisa as the alarm shifted pitch, now whining with a shrill, desperate warning. Let me guess, he said. That means reinforcements. She nodded. More will come. These were scouts. He groaned. I hate that word. Scouts is always code for worse things later. We must leave this station. Oh, sure, now you say that. They moved quickly, deeper into the labyrinth of forgotten hallways. Theo leaned on Nisa more than he cared to admit, but she didn't seem to mind. In fact, for someone who had lived alone for centuries, she was strangely efficient at helping someone else without making them feel like dead weight. They reached a hatch that looked like it hadn't opened since the universe was in beta testing. Nisa slid her hand across an ancient panel, muttering something in a language that sounded like glass breaking underwater. The panel responded. The hatch opened with a sigh, revealing a cramped service shaft that led downward. Lovely, Theo said. Claustrophobia, broken ribs, and an enemy with a hobby for extermination. All my favorite things. They climbed, or rather, Nisa climbed. Theo mostly fell in slow, painful installments. The shaft ended in what appeared to be a subterranean hangar. If hangars could be classified as dusty graveyards for ancient tech. Among the debris sat a ship, small, spider-shaped, and unmistakably alien. That thing flies? Theo asked. Nissa nodded. It is mine. Of course it is. He limped over to it while she began prepping systems. The inside was worse. The cockpit looked like it had been decorated by someone who hated right angles and loved glowing sigils. Nissa slid into the pilot's seat like it was an extension of her body. Theo settled into what might have been a chair if it didn't immediately poke him in 5 places. So, you mind telling me where exactly we're going? Or are we just hitting random warp coordinates and hoping for the best? Out of range, somewhere unregistered, I have options. You always talk like an ominous fortune cookie, you know that? She turned her head slightly. You are still talking, he saluted. Copy that, Commander Dracula. The engines roared to life with a low vibration that felt like a bass line being played through his bones. Outside, the hangar doors began to creak open, and with them came the unmistakable sound of approaching gunships. Theo looked out the viewport. Well, the welcoming committee brought air support. So thoughtful. Nisa's fingers danced over controls and the ship lifted, hovering smoothly despite its age. With a flash of light and a rippling shudder, they blasted free of the station, just as gunfire streaked behind them. Stars filled the screen. The darkness stretched out in all directions. Theo let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Well, he said, I've had worse Tuesdays. Nisa didn't respond immediately. She was scanning star maps, eyes narrowed. They will follow. You think they're after you or me? Yes. He rubbed his face. Great. She looked at him, really looked. You did not have to help me. Not when you first saw me. Not when they came. Why? He stared at the stars. Because you were alone, and angry, and scared. And I know how that feels. Plus, you're the only person who's kept me from dying 3 times in 24 hours. I feel like that deserves at least basic loyalty. Silence, then, softly. Thank you. Theo raised an eyebrow. You just said thank you. She turned back to the controls. You are hallucinating. He chuckled. Whatever you say, Nisa. Just don't suck my blood while I sleep. Not unless you insult my ship again. He looked around. Honestly, I love what you've done with the place. Very ancient death temple meets murder chrysalis. Nissa's mouth twitched again. Their ship vanished into the black, leaving behind a dying station, a very confused extraction team, and the first whisper of something the galaxy hadn't heard in a long, long time. Hope. Or maybe just the sound of one very weird friendship beginning. Either way, it was loud enough to echo. The ship dropped out of slipstream with a noise like someone slurping soup at the end of the universe. Theo flinched as his stomach tried to relocate to a more peaceful dimension. Nissa, of course, didn't react at all. She just adjusted a few glowing glyphs on the control panel, her long fingers moving like she was tuning an ancient harp built by quantum monks. Theo groaned and slumped sideways in his seat. Okay, I take it back. Slipstream travel is not cool. It's like being spun in a washing machine full of existential regret. You are adapting, she said without looking at him. I'm adapting to nausea. There's a difference. Outside the viewport, a fractured moon hung in space, orbiting a gas giant the color of bruised gold. A forgotten research facility clung to the broken rocks like a mechanical barnacle, power flickering on just enough to say, "Hey, we still exist, barely." Theo squinted. "This where you take all your new friends?" "I do not have friends." "Well," he muttered, "you're doing great so far." They docked with a magnetic thunk and stepped out into a corridor that smelled like stale air, burnt circuits, and a very faint hint of roasted algae. The station was silent except for the buzz of old systems pretending to be useful. Theo ran a hand along the wall. This place is like the haunted version of a science museum. It is safe, forgotten, nothing lives here. Reassuring. Nissa moved ahead, scanning doors with a device shaped like a flattened crystal. Theo followed, limping slightly less with each step. Her earlier medfoam was working wonders, though he still wasn't convinced it wouldn't eventually turn him into a couch. They reached what looked like a command room, or possibly a break room for very serious aliens. She activated a console, and the walls lit with data streams in a language that looked like abstract art on a caffeine bender. Theo plopped into a half-working chair. "So what's the plan now? Hide? Fight back? Bake cookies?" "Wait. They will search the station we left. Waste resources. By the time they trace our path, we move again." He rubbed his eyes. "You know, for someone being hunted by at least 2 governments and maybe a corporation with a private army, you're shockingly chill. I have spent many years waiting." "Yeah, but now you have me. I'm like a chaos grenade in pants." Nissa gave him a long look. "You are not wearing pants." He looked down at his torn flight suit. "Okay, technically they're pants. Just ventilated ones." She resumed tapping commands on the panel. "I need rest. The ship needs time to cool. You will not wander." "No promises." She paused. "You would be dead in 20 steps." "Wow, so encouraging." Nissa walked away down the hall. Theo waited a full 10 seconds before immediately ignoring her. The station's corridors were dark but not hostile. He found what looked like an observation deck, glass cracked but still intact, overlooking the swirl of the gas giant outside. He sat down, dangling his feet over the edge of a defunct maintenance pit. For a moment, things were quiet. Then the screen in the far corner flickered to life. Theo turned. "Oh no, no creepy AI, no ghosts, no found footage horror. Thank you." The image stabilized. It was grainy but definitely not automated. A human face appeared, female, stern, wearing a Terran military uniform with too many pins. Theo blinked. "General Idris?" She leaned forward. "Ward, if you're seeing this, congratulations. You survived your idiotic detour." He looked around. "Is this a pre-recorded insult? And then you've probably already made contact with the alien. You always were the type to pet stray dogs." "I like dogs," Theo muttered. "Listen carefully. You're in possession of a Class Black anomaly. That's Nissa. The project she came from was buried for a reason. She isn't just a lost species. She's the last test subject of an experiment that nearly broke the warp lattice of half the outer ring." Theo frowned. "That sounds like an exaggeration." "She was designed to connect, to manipulate emotion through resonance. Her species wasn't just mutated. They were engineered. She's a living psychic amplifier. In the wrong hands." The feed cut. He sat there for a long moment, the flickering glow of the screen fading into nothing. Then he sighed and stood, making his way back down the corridor. Nissa was waiting for him outside the control room. Her expression hadn't changed, but her ears were angled back slightly, subtle, tense. "You wandered." "I know," he said. "You found something." He nodded. "Your file. Military stuff. Experimental project. All that." She said nothing. "You were made to feel, or to make others feel, right?" Her voice was quiet. To heal, to guide, then to control. Theo leaned against the wall beside her. Well, no offense, but you've been terrible at mind controlling me. I'm still here, still annoying, still saying things that make you look vaguely murderous. Her eyes flicked to him. You are difficult. I get that a lot. She looked away. I did not choose what I am. I know. That's why I'm still here. He pushed off the wall and stretched. So, since we've got a little downtime before the next life-threatening pursuit, you want to teach me how to fly that death spider of yours? Nisa blinked. You would destroy it. That's fair. Pause, then carefully. I could teach you how to repair the coolant valves, if you promise not to touch anything without permission. He grinned. It's a deal. They returned to the ship. Nisa opened a panel near the engine core, explaining each part with a precision that made Theo feel like he was back in school. Only this time the teacher had fangs and a tendency to stab things. Still, it wasn't bad. Kind of nice. Hours passed, no alarms, no missiles. Just two people, one human, one engineered alien empathic amplifier, learning how to fix a leaking flux array together. Theo held up a wrench. So, clockwise? Nissa looked at him. Left. My left or your left? She stared, he groaned. Right. Vampire left. And for the first time, Nissa laughed. Quietly, just a breath, but real. Theo nearly dropped the wrench. You do that often? No. Well, you should. You've got a nice laugh. She said nothing, but she didn't stop smiling for a long time. The transmission hit the console like a slap from space itself. Nissa froze mid-motion, fingers still curled around the control crystal. Theo, balanced precariously on top of the coolant housing, nearly fell and he added another bruise to his growing collection. The hologram bloomed in midair, a face both familiar and very, very unpleasant. Slender, sharp-featured, and glowing faint blue like all the best threats do. Not military, not Terran. Alien and unmistakably like Nisa. Same long ears, same luminous eyes, but colder, too perfect. Nisathan, the voice said, silk hiding steel. You have broken the silence. Theo blinked. Wait, Nisathan? That's your full name? That's awesome. It sounds like a spell that turns people into fog. Nisa ignored him. Her jaw tightened. You are late. I am eternal, said the hologram. You, sister, are alone. Or were, until this fragile thing. The hologram gestured toward Theo with disdain that could vaporize a lesser man. Theo gave a polite wave. Hi, fragile thing, reporting in. Has a name. Prefers sandwiches over annihilation. The hologram didn't smile. Come back, Nisathan. What's left of the blood core has been restored. We can reclaim the legacy, the design. I declined that legacy 100 years ago, she said. And you are not my brother. You are a blueprint in denial. Theo leaned closer to the console. Anyone else getting serious evil twin vibes here? The hologram turned to him. You are interfering in a process older than your species. Do you believe you matter? I mean, I once ate 37 fire peanuts in one sitting. That counts for something. Nisa cut in. We're not returning. You came to erase me, didn't you? The figure finally smiled. It wasn't a good smile. You were never supposed to exist alone. The signal cut. Nisa stood very still. Theo pulled himself down from the coolant tower with a wince. Okay, that's bad, but we've handled worse, right? Rogue killbots, exploding hallway soup. That one time I tried to cook. He's not bluffing, she said. They've restored the hive. Theo paused. You mean there are more of you now? Like fangy empathy vampires with emotionally charged eyeballs and drama degrees? They are not like me. Okay, still. Scale of 1 to galactic war? She hesitated. Depends how many they brought back. If they've synchronized the core, it could be thousands. He sat on the floor. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. So, we run again? Nisa turned, the lights from the console casting a faint glow on her face. Number? They won't stop. This is not a chase anymore. Theo stared at her. So what's the plan? Her eyes locked with his. We end it. Moments later, they were in the ship, hurtling through slip space, tracking the signal back to a dead moon orbiting a pulsar. The moon wasn't on any charts. It existed in a place where laws bent, space shimmered, and unlicensed science had clearly been partying a little too hard. The base emerged from the rock like a metallic heart. Dark towers, pulsing lights. Nissa landed the ship in a narrow chasm. Theo checked his gear. One working pulse pistol, 2 EMP grenades, and a lucky screwdriver with mysterious symbols he was pretty sure were just coffee stains. So, you go high, I go low? You stay behind me. If I fall, you destroy the core. Got it. Heroic backup plan. Minor chance of fiery death. They entered through a maintenance shaft. Inside, it was worse than expected. Rows of pods lined the walls, each containing a form, tall, still, not yet alive, but humming with potential. Theo shivered. This is giving me a real creepy nursery vibe. At the center of the room stood the core, a pulsating mass of crystal and neural threads, glowing with synchronized rhythm. And before it, the hologram. No, not a hologram anymore. A body. Real, breathing, watching them with cold amusement. You came, he said. I came to end this, Nissa replied. They clashed. It wasn't just blades, it was emotion. Force fields triggered by memory, projections made from pain. Every strike vibrating with ancient fury. Theo ducked behind a console as waves of resonance shattered glass and bent metal. One of the clones stirred in its pod. Theo cursed, ran to the core, and activated the override Nissa had programmed into his wrist module. A high-pitched whine filled the air. Clones began to twitch. The core blinked erratically. Nissa landed hard, rolling to her feet. Her brother advanced, slower now, body flickering as if something inside him was unraveling. You gave up what you were, he spat. I chose what I became, she said. Theo lobbed an EMP grenade at the base of the core. It detonated. Everything froze. Light exploded outward. The clones collapsed, inert. The brother's body cracked, dissolved into fragments of data and dust. Silence. Nissa stood in the wreckage, swaying. Theo ran to her, catching her just before she fell. You okay? I am free. They limped back to the ship together. Once airborne, Theo collapsed into the co-pilot seat and let out a long breath. So, what now? You going back to hiding on haunted moons? Nissa looked out at the stars. Number I've hidden long enough. He smiled. You thinking what I'm thinking? You're thinking about snacks. Okay, yes, but also, maybe we don't run anymore. Maybe we go where people need help. Fix some things. Prove the galaxy wrong about you. She considered this. You're loud. You attract danger. I'm also great at witty commentary and fixing coolant leaks. Nissa leaned back. Then we go together. Partners? She nodded. He grinned. Okay, first stop, we get real food. Second stop, we make history. And somewhere in a galaxy still full of war and fear, one vampire and one human flew toward the stars. Not to escape, but to change them.